Welcome to another episode of Resortera Wave, April 1st, 2023. Another one that I just decided to do out of the blue with the instance. You have a whole week of that, a whole week of events, confirmations. We already know that El Tri will play against the U.S. In the Nations League semifinals in Las Vegas. We know about the April 19th game. It's the close of the season in Europe. So, a lot of determinations on who can be relegated, because I think there is that possibility that several Mexican players will experience that in Europe. The continuation of Memo Ochoa. I haven't been on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter anymore, but I still tend to give it a look. I'm not gonna lie. And this week, this stat that it's on the screen came to my attention. The reality of Memo Ochoa, and being the starter of El Tri. I think this is one of those examples of how the media has created, the intense criticism of his presence as a Mexican starter, and it's unreasonable, like I said in the last episode, because of how important he has been in the World Cups. I think X Goals MX also shares some stats about the Gold Cup, and that with Memo Ochoa, El Tri always wins the Gold Cup. I think it's worth noting how important the World Cup all of a sudden, not the World Cup, the Gold Cup. I think the Gold Cup will all of a sudden be a really important moment for Diego Coca this summer. How he sort of distributes his rosters with the Nations League and the Gold Cup. Keep in mind that there is a sense that the World Cup was just in the winter. This summer, you want your players to rest, no? And that idea that they will be continuously playing, I think will be included in the conversation, how he does those lists. But I think this episode, I want to talk a little bit about the word mediocre, because it has been used several times this week, especially after the draw against Jamaica, and the boos that were, specifically sort of thrown at Ochoa, Jorge Sanchez and Raul Jimenez. And then after the game, Chucky Lozano went on to say that, we deserve the support of the team, we deserve the support of the fans, no? That he's asking for el apoyo de la fanaticada. And one of the videos that went viral is from Enrique Burak, who's a big journalist for Televisa. And he sets the word mediocres, no? That, they're players that have sort of been in the, they've always had the support. There's always been the support from the fans, the media, and the sponsors, always around the Mexican national team. And there's this idea that they have failed many, many times, no? I think we really got to be careful with how we point this out, because I feel like it is unjust to call them mediocres all of a sudden, all of them. I think what's mediocre is a system, that is sort of acts like the umbrella of the national team, of what makes Mexican national teams. I think the mediocre part, or the mediocre, como tú veas, pero voy a decir mediocre, is the idea that for many, many years, El Tri has been sort of controlled by a certain few, and those few that have the power in Mexican football have not been able to make proper projects that enhance the Mexican sport, that enhance the most important sport in the country. Money has always existed. Sponsors have always existed. Interest has always existed. Eyes in the Mexican league have always existed. But the thing is how you manage the projects. How much respect do you give to projects that could potentially enhance the Mexican game? I feel right now that there are certain powers, or the power dynamics around the FMF and around what makes El Tri, that prevent it to take that next step. There's interest around those things. Um, you know, this whole idea uh, that they're mediocres because they don't win anything. I think that's a little bit off base, because I think we have seen successes with the national team. 2012, of course, that's 10 years ago, was a big one. Uh, you know, um, that was an example of what the potential holds for Mexican football when things, have a certain idea around them, and a certain, there has to be talent as well. I think what showed us about London is that there is talent in Mexico, and we have lived with many memories of the past, and I think that's also frustrating to the fan, and to everyone involved in the Mexican game. You have to go out and try different things to not repeat the same thing over and over again. I think the last two World Cups, the 18 and the 22 World Cup, which were coached by foreign managers, didn't fundamentally give any change to the Mexican game. In other words, I think with Tata, things went backwards instead of forwards. And that is fault for the people that are involved on the top, of how they choose, or who makes the calls of who comes to Mexico and coaches the team. You know, with all the thoughts out there, with Coca trying to make his team. There's rumors that Chicharito will be back, especially if he's healthy by the 19. I think he'll play in that game. Um, my focus right now is this idea that eh, ahorita pinches thoughts just went all over my brain, but the Mexican national team itself is not a place to make a revolutionary tactical thing, or to make tactical revolution. A coach is not going to come to the national team and all of a sudden is going to make it play pretty and so forth. I think the Mexican national team at this point needs of a coach that understands the player, that understands the culture, and that brings a sort of discipline to the team. Um, you know, in those things, Diego Coca doesn't fulfill any of those things, because Diego Coca doesn't feel the Mexican national team. Diego Coca is just an employee of the FMF. Um, and I think it's important to know that aspect, especially now when, to be honest, I'd rather see a Mexican coach coaching that Argentina Mexico game in the World Cup than Tata Martino. Why do you bring Martino and pay him millions of dollars to give us a shitty performance like that? I'd rather have a Tuca coaching in that situation that feels the colors, that knows the Mexican game, that's been around the Mexican game for many years. The man said he wanted to coach the national team. What's crazy thing in the last 48 hours, especially with Nacho Ambriz going on ESPN and talking about his idea of how Mexican football is nowadays. Nacho says that he would have been the assistant. So you could imagine maybe Tuca as a coach, Nacho Ambriz as assistant, and maybe someone else would have pulled through and been an assistant. That's a Mexican core. The Mexican core was also present in the coaching staff in 2012. It was Yayo de la Torre, Chavita Reyes, and Flaco Tena. It worked well. They won a gold medal. They beat Brazil in London. It's a big deal, and that's not mediocre. The thing that is mediocre, and I know that at the end of the day, what's sad is what you see on the field. Is the players playing in the 2-2 draw, so they will be the mediocres. But the mediocres have always been those that have made the decisions in the Mexican game, and that has always been its biggest curse. And I think this situation now is tiring. It's tiring for the fan, and the fan is not dumb anymore. The fan understands that there has been shitty things going behind the scenes that continue to be shitty. You see the situation with Ares de Parga. What has Ares de Parga done to deserve that position in the Mexican national team? The guy sucked at Pumas. He sucked at Querétaro, and he has one of the biggest, most important jobs in the Mexican game right now. So Dulio Davino's probably gonna come in. That's what Sutcliffe said this week. And Dulio Davino, it was an okay job with Monterrey. I'm not gonna say it was terrible, because he won titles, and I think that's something important. Hopefully, as director of national teams, Dulio Davino, with his experience, he might add different things. contrary to, for example, Gerardo Torrado, at least Duli already had an experience with a club, an important club, a club with a lot of money. But let it be known, it's a club with a lot of money in Monterrey, and it's a lot of foreign talent. There isn't many cases in Mexico at the moment where it says that you have a good track record working on Mexican talent. Of course, Chivas is the best example because they only play with Mexican players, but also Pachuca plays with a lot of Mexican players. How do you bring them up? In Santos, you also see important Mexican players coming through the ranks. So I just think right now the whole situation about the use of the word mediocre has to be thrown at those people that always been around making the decisions. Los famosos dueños, how they say, the famous owners of the Liga MX clubs that have been involved in many, many bad decisions that haven't led Mexican football to take bigger steps on the world stage. Now, it's funny to me right now because for many, many years, the Gold Cup was looked as like the trophy. It's bad if you don't win it. It's terrible if you don't win it. If you win it, if you win the Gold Cup, it's like whatever, no. Se tenía que ganar a huevo. Se tenía que ganar. There's no. And now we're putting the Gold Cup as a situation of a must win, and we have to be considerate now. El Tri is not showing any signs of improvement in their style of play since the Tata days. The first games with Coca weren't so um, ecstatic, or they weren't so they didn't show that much improvement, generally speaking. And like I said in the other video, he has to make decisions that are gonna be maybe critical in the group. No, I do see that you have to make calls, no, and you have to sort of trust what you believe in. And I think that's what Coca has to do. If Coca doesn't do stuff that he doesn't believe fully, then he's not gonna be there long. I think that his tactical perspective is not um, so in prone, or so in tune with how the Mexican team tends to play, and I think that's gonna cause troubles in the next months. But let it be. The word mediocre, I think, has to be used adequately. The mediocre part of the national team, yes, there's players that still haven't been able to perform at the highest level with the national team, but it is mediocre, 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 mediocre. Everything that has happened around the national team for the last 10 years or so. Let it be that after the London gold medals, El Tri almost doesn't make the World Cup in 2014. That is mediocre. So there is a lot of things that make the situation with the national team very toxic, and it makes it so toxic that the players are demotivated to play for the national team, and that has been the case for many, many years now. It's not something that just happened several weeks ago. It's something that's been going on for years, and I think that's where the root of the problem is. And unless they don't fix that, it will continue to be very, very troublesome for the Tri in the next upcoming years. So thank you for watching another quick opinion piece here for Resortera Wave. Have a great weekend and enjoy the games this week.